introspections and not fighting, supporting those. I mean, I see those MAGA being proud. Oh, we have a strong military. We need to use, well, no. The people that are leading you towards war are going to use you as a cannon fodder, and it is going to come out of your pocket, and they are going to be richer. And you can look at every time all those leaders, in the US, they get into power, either in the Congress or as president, they become much richer. And they say, oh, well, Trump, he could be playing golf and he could be retiring and so on. Well, guess what? What has he done that has made him much richer? Through social, he made billions of dollars. He did a scam coin. A meme coin where he actually cheated out of billions of dollars. The same as Milei did in Argentina. And those people, the MAGA people, they're closing an eye on that because it's convenient. No, sorry. You know what? You can be MAGA. I have no problem with that. You want to be MAGA, because you despise Biden. There's a few things. Okay, that's ideology. But be fair. He cheat people out of billions of dollars on what they call a shit coin. Well, you have to call him out, because if you don't, you are part of a cult.
And someone is pointing out here, Bessie is pointing out, Scott Besson, who's the Secretary of the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury. He was a partner at the Soros Fund Management. So we're always hearing about MAGA saying Soros is the root of all evil, and he picks like the right hand of Soros to be in his administration. And I'm sure it has is 5D chess that's just going right over my head. But to me, it looks a lot like continuity of agenda. It looks like the same interests, different people, albeit different people, but the exact same interests from one administration to the next. I always point this out. I always warn people about the cabinet picks. Before they even step foot into office, I warn people. I did it for Obama, Trump during his first administration. Before he stepped foot, I said he's going to fill his cabinet up with swamp monsters, and it's going to be continuity of agenda. That is exactly what happened, because that's what you look at. You look at the people he surrounds himself with. All of these theories that he was going to keep them on short leashes. America's 300 million people. Don't tell me those are the only people he can find. And don't tell me he needs to get them through confirmation and then he'll keep tabs on them. He obviously isn't. Look at Rubio right now. An unrepentant, unleashed neocon doing exactly what neocons do: lie, cheat, justify war, interference, coercion worldwide, every corner of the world, meddling in it, which is what Trump supporters were trying to vote out of office. And what they ended up with is just as bad as what they were voting against. Thank you, Pesci, for that. That's a good. I always forget that one. It's so ridiculous. And so obvious. Let's do some of the questions. Danny, if you want, anytime, or Angela, anyone that needs to leave, no worries. You're still welcome to come back next week. No worries at all. Let's do the questions. Let's just throw them right up here. Do you foresee Europe centralizing military power at EU level in order to enforce compliance with EU policies on member states to take control of electoral outcomes? I don't really think they need to do that, because the EU already is a layer that has been imposed upon the sovereignty of individual European states. Angela has always talked about how this was a CIA project. It was meant to politically capture and control Europe since the end of World War II. That has been the process that has been taking place. I believe it has culminated to where Europe really is incapable of exercising sovereignty. You just have a couple of anomalies in these smaller countries that create problems, but not really get impeding anything. I mean, Hungary, I think they just voted. They withheld their veto. They could have vetoed it. They didn't. You know what I mean? I don't think they need to do anything extreme like that. Anyone that wants to can jump in on any of these.
I'll just say that I believe that the model for Europe, actually, what's more important than this is turning Europe into the US's model. I believe this has been the aim for many, many decades. This is why the European Union was actually championed by subsequent US administrations. It was to turn Europe economically and politically into a US vassal, which is very, very clear given what happened to Nord Stream and given what we know about the strategy of the United States since the Gorbachev era, essentially, when the United States was trying to facilitate the complete collapse of the Soviet Union. It was to keep Europe down. And the only way Europe can be completely down is if its economy attempts and its politics attempts to mirror the United States's, because there isn't any room for another kind of United States. The United States, with its complete and utter reliance on Wall Street and the Pentagon, this is a model that can't be repeated because the U.S. is the hegemon. It is the one that dominates these institutions. And so Europe following along this path only leads them further under the thumb of these institutions, which then leads them further under the thumb of U.S. foreign policy. So that really is the plan here, no matter what form it takes, no matter if it looks like Trump is bullying Europe more than usual rhetorically. The ultimate agenda is the same. It's to ensure that Europe does not have any strategic, political, geopolitical, economic sovereignty whatsoever. And that's why all of this militarization will end up further facilitating the destruction of Europe's economies, which has already been happening. And it will create social tensions and chaos and divisions and fractures and fragments that make it so it's so much easier to control. And I believe that's what the United States ultimately wants in the end. And it, unlike all of the other topics we've talked about, even Yemen or China, Russia, Europe, it's a lot easier to do this because they already are politically captured to a large extent.
And to add to that point, Danny, people who think that Europe is somehow splitting off from the U.S. and they're interfering in the peace plan with Russia. How does any of this proxy war with Ukraine benefit Europe? It is destroying their economy. There's not even one conceivable way any of them benefit from this conflict, except maybe the arms industry. But the arms industry is connected to the hip with the U.S. arms industry. So really, this is just the U.S. benefiting from this at the expense of Europe. I mean, look at Germany and even their special interests, the big industry in Germany, got vetoed. They don't get a vote. They don't get to have a say. Their cheap energy coming from Russia has been completely cut off. So this is what I'm trying to explain to people. This is something we all repeat over and over again. Follow the money. All right, let's keep going. Actually, there's a lot of questions this week. This isn't really a question, but well, it kind of is a question. They're talking about bioweapons tuned to genetic clusters, races. Doesn't this freak everyone out? Yet crickets from leaders. But actually, that's not entirely true. I saw this at the beginning. Do people remember this? This neocon project for the new American century, and they had this paper titled "Rebuilding America's Defenses." And right down here, they talk about advanced forms of biological warfare that can target specific genotypes may transform biological warfare from the realm of terror to a potentially useful tool. Who talks like that except someone who would actually produce and use a weapon like this? So no, this is very real. Christian Rescue here is not imagining this. This is real. This is something that they have been working on all along. I have no idea the progress they've made. If you're wondering why there's bioweapons all over Ukraine collecting Slavic genetic material, that might be your answer. And they have labs like this here in Asia. Also, the U.S. government, the U.S. military has, I think they have a lab here in Thailand doing exactly this. So it's very worrying. And this is something that I would love to talk about, but you can see how much the four of us have to struggle just to convince you that President Trump is a lying politician, just like everyone else in Washington. If that, and we have to work so hard to explain this to people, how are we going to talk about genospecific bioweapons? But thank you for that. Thank you for that question. Let's see. Not a question, just want to say how disappointed I am with Trump. So quickly going rabid like this, I was at least hoping for a honeymoon period. I see a lot of people making this comment. This is important to accept that this is not working out the way you wanted and just face the truth. That takes a lot of courage to do it. It takes a lot of courage to admit maybe you were wrong, but not really. You wanted to hope for something better. You didn't do anything. They did. The people you invested hope in violated that, broke that trust, that hope, that support you placed in them. It's on them. It's not on you. So you don't owe them anything. Just speak up about it. Hold them accountable. Okay, the Ansar Allah, which people refer to as the Houthis, can they strike back? Well, I mean, this all remains to be seen. Can they strike at U.S. warships and sink them? They haven't yet. Can they? This remains to be seen. These are the advancement of military technology and its proliferation all around the world is leveling the playing field. It really is. And it is only a matter of time before this happens. But will it happen with Ansar Allah in Yemen and this conflict with the U.S.? I don't know. Let's see.
Well, I'll just add that. Let me, because I will head out after this.
Sure.
In terms of that question, I believe, I think it's clear that Ansar Allah they have the capabilities. I mean, they have hypersonic missiles. They've launched them at Israel. Whether they hit or not, whether Ansar Allah wants to escalate in this major way and create a permanent war situation, which the United States is more than willing to embroil itself in. First of all, if Yemen were to hit a U.S. destroyer with a hypersonic missile, the United States has no choice, given its rabid warmongering foreign policy regime, but to continue to escalate. So obviously, Ansar Allah will be making calculations as to whether it is worth that trouble. I mean, there will be a response. And part of the reason why there will be a response is because it's the United States here is, in Yemen's eyes, is doing the bidding of Israel, which the reason why Yemen is even in the fold is because of this horrific blockade that is an extension of the horrific genocide, and the blockade is ongoing, which Yemen will not cease. So Yemen will continue naval operations. I believe they already said they're going to continue to blockade Israeli and Israeli-linked vessels. So that's not going to stop. So already there's a consequence, but Yemen will likely launch a military operation. How big it will be, whether it will sink a U.S. ship, that the fact that we even asking that question though indicates that Donald Trump is really rolling the dice here, because Donald Trump's administration cannot afford to become embroiled in a permanent war in West Asia. But that's exactly the path that he is running toward right now at a very fast pace. And he's going to have to depend on Ansar Allah's calculations and whether they deem it necessary for the civilian population in particular to withstand this kind of response. Because from the beginning, Ansar Allah, just like Iran, just like any other part of the Axis resistance, has been calculating what are the necessary escalatory steps that both minimize the damage to the civilian populations and people while maximizing the impact. So as you said, Brian, we'll see, but there will be something down the way militarily coming from Ansar Allah, because they have no choice in the matter. Whether it sinks a ship is another question, but it will be significant, and it will, it'll create a big dilemma for Donald Trump, one of his own making, and no one should feel bad about him for. Everyone should be infuriated with him and infuriated with this U.S. Political and military regime, which is causing just unnecessary devastation.
Hey, Dan,
yeah.
Megatron on Twitter, he has something out. He says the Houthis targeted the USS Harry Truman in the Red Sea after the bombardment of Yemen. Initial unconfirmed reports of a direct hit on a Yemeni missile on the U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS Harry S. Truman in the Red Sea. This is reported by local Arab sources and even by Israeli sources, but right now there is no confirmation. Other sources mention damage to the carrier, possibly due to a missile being intercepted at the last second, but not a direct hit.
Right. Well, thanks, Rasheed. Yeah, no, I think I saw that, and so it's unclear, but there will be more of that coming. But unfortunately, I do have to go. I'm actually streaming in 2.5 hours with Mohammed Marandi on Yemen. So
yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, be sure everybody you can come on to that after you're done here. But thanks so much for having me, guys, and take care. Have a good one.
All right, thanks, Danny.
Bye.
Okay, let's go. And anyone else, if I'm not going to force you to stay here, this is the question, so don't worry. let's see here. Okay, the 800 billion allocation by the EU. This is part of their rearm program. Our heads got really gigantic there when Danny left. Through private military companies, it's contracts, hiring foreign immigrants to fulfill policing manpower needs. Look, I don't know. One point that I heard Alexander Maciuras bring up, and he's absolutely right. None of this is going to happen overnight. This is why I am saying they are trying to freeze this conflict. They are obviously trying to openly pressuring Russia into a ceasefire that they can get to stick and then expand and take advantage of, exploit, so that they can buy time to do all of this. Because we already have talked for 3 years straight about the Western military-industrial base and how it's incapable of catching up, narrowing this divide between themselves and just Russia, let alone China. So whatever it is that they're planning on doing, I wouldn't expect it to be done well or quickly.
Yeah,
probably.
Right. Yeah. There's a lag time actually. First of all, they need to change the laws in the EU. You have very strict laws when it comes to spending, especially when it comes to, you can have a maximum deficit of 3% of your GDP. So that would increase the threshold. So they need to change laws. But in addition to that, you know very well how it works when it comes to increasing military spending. Well, it's not like it's going to take time. You need to build up capacity. You need to build up a factory. You need actually to train people. A lot of things that, a lot of professions, engineers and so on, they're not there in the market. You need to train them. This is going to build up this whole military that they want to do in Europe. It's going to take years. And what is interesting is that you've seen when I listen to Trump, what he's saying, he's actually threatening Russia of more sanctions. The same as von der Leyen. They were saying, "Oh, we are going to destroy Russian economy and so on." But guess what? Everything they could throw at Russia, they've thrown it. You cannot sanction anything anymore. The only thing you can sanction are marginal things. I mean, you want to sanction cigarettes? And you think that if you sanction cigarettes in Russia, Russia is going to lose? Well, this is the point. This is how absurd it is. The only thing is the difference with Trump is that he has a big mouth. He talks loud and he flexes muscles, but he doesn't have anything to back up. And ultimately, the cards are on Putin's hands. People don't realize, but why the West is calling for a stop in a freeze, 30 days of freezing the conflict? Because they're losing. And guess what? Do you think for a second that if Russia was losing, that Trump would ask for peace with Russia? He would double down. The only thing is that they need to actually have a narrative that is actually on their favor. And the last thing he wants is really to be the one that losing that war. So it's going to be a shifting blame. He wants to put probably Russia in a position where you give an offer to Russia that they cannot accept. It's just ridiculous. And then he has a good excuse to step out. He say, well, you know what? I did. I'm Gandhi. I'm a man of peace. They didn't want to make peace. I just live it. And ultimately, you'll end up like selling weapons to the EU. So he's winning on all fronts, actually. Saving face, getting the EU to be cannon fodder, getting them to spend extra money, which is going to be spent in US weapons, not EU weapons. Who's spending the most right now in the EU? Eastern countries, especially Poland. And we need to pay really close attention to Poland. Poland is spending 5% of its GDP on defense, and they're building a huge army. Poland is going to take over as being the largest army in Europe. We need to pay close attention. And Poland is de facto a US proxy. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Poland takes over the position of Ukraine as a second front.
Anything is possible. Also, a lot of people have been considering the Baltic nations, the next ones, fed into the wood chipper. So we just have to wait and see. And there's a couple of questions here about will the British and French really send troops? But hold on, let's Let's just do it in order here. Which state actors benefit most from an Iran-U.S. conflict? The U.S. The U.S. is ultimately at the center of all of this. People imagine that Israel is somehow benefiting from all of this, somehow that they this tiny country. Yes, they spend a lot on lobbying, but what people always do, they're always adding up all the money AIPAC is spending. And they don't look at how much money just Raytheon, Lockheed, Boeing, General Dynamics, all these weapons manufacturers, just them alone, they spend way more than Israel does. And then there's other special interests like big ag, big pharma, big oil. So there's the auto industry. All of these special interests are giving politicians, and if you add it up, the largest group of donors are U.S.-based gigantic corporations, financial institutions, and they're the ones that want to dominate the world. They have an economic model that is predicated on constant expansion and monopoly. And so this is what they're doing, and they're doing it at the barrel of a gun all around the planet. So they are the ones who are going to benefit because, as Rasheed points out, Iran is, the next weak link. They got Syria, they're going after Yemen, Iran is next, and then they have to pick Russia or China. And I don't think that it's set. I think they just look at the situation at the time, which one is more viable, and that is what they're doing. So it is the U.S. who benefits. Hold on. There's a lot of kind of duplicate questions here. Okay, so again, this is about so what is the overarching strategy? No rivals has always been the U.S. strategy since before the world wars, since after the world wars. American primacy over the entire planet. No rivals allowed. China not allowed to rise. Russia not allowed to rise. Iran not allowed to rise. Europe not allowed to have an independent foreign policy. Canada, Australia, not allowed. No one's allowed. The U.S. runs the entire show. It is global empire. That is the overarching strategy.
By the way, Brian, we saw it with Japan. Remember in 1987, Japan was about to surpass U.S. economy, and that's when actually they started smashing. In the U.S., they were smashing like Japanese TVs and so on, and actually they pressure Japan to manipulate its currency, and they made actually Japan non-competitive. It was what we call the Plaza Accord, and that's how they had those lost decades of for the Japanese economy because they didn't want Japan to surpass the US. So even the allies, they will never allow an ally like, let's say, Germany, just to be too powerful. They need to, they are going to support them up to a certain level, but if it becomes a threat in their dominance, in their hegemony, then they are going to, they're willing to destroy even their allies.
They don't have any allies. They only have victims. They
don't. Actually, what they do is, in reality, they hijack the democracies because they put in place, they pre-select the leaders of those countries, and ultimately those leaders they work for the US, not for their countries. We saw Macron. We mentioned this just before. Well, Macron was actually selected by the American French Foundation. Of course, he comes from the Rothschild Bank. You have all this globalist background and so on. But when you look at the French American Foundation, the single purpose is to advance US interests in the world. So basically, he's a fellow of this organization. He becomes president, and de facto, you are advancing US agenda. So when Macron pretends, the US is actually going against us, that's just a clown show. It's a clown show because ultimately you saw there was a combined effort. They were all in sync when they sent that tweet, all those tweets. The ball is on Russia's side. Everybody, they were all tweeting the same message. Hey, do you think for a second that now, there are tensions between the EU and the US? No, it's just the surface. They want to make their people to feel that the US is going against EU interest, or or EU is left alone, and that's a good excuse to increase military spending. So it's just a clown show. But the problem is that people, they buy into those clown shows. We need to look at really the long term. And they're very good actors. it can be very counterintuitive. You see like this whole thing, like this drama thing about Zelensky and so on. But ultimately, you see a few days later, Zelensky is back and he's doing what he's supposed to do, work for the US. Do you think for a second he's working for Ukraine? And actually, just think, if you really analyze what happened, Zelensky, by having a tough stance with Trump, he goes back to Ukraine. That's a bonus for him, because he says to his people, "I was tough with that's what he says." And actually, he's got the backing of the ultra right, all those neo Nazis, that want him to be firm. That's a clown show.
And he's literally an actor, and so is President Trump to a certain extent.
By the way, Macron was also an actor. People forget, but Macron, he met his wife or his husband, whatever you want to believe. He was. Sorry for the joke. It's late. It's Sunday night. It's late. She was his drama teacher. Trudeau, do you know that Trudeau was actually, he started being an actor? I mean, those guys are just actors, and that's what they do. There's a formal power and informal power. People on the front, it's not the one that with the real power. Even Trump, I would say there are probably much stronger forces behind Trump. You don't get to that level if you're not backed by very, very strong people. So whoever is on the front, they're just clowns. The only exceptions, really, when you look at the very difference, Putin and Xi Jinping, it's what we call meritocracy. They get to that level because they are the best, by far the best, and they have the real power. They do.
Yes, and you can tell when they're talking that they actually know what's going on, and then you hear President Trump talking about how Spain is a BRICS man. Maybe he thinks Spain is the S in BRICS or something.
No.
I mean, honestly, we all know what the BRICS countries are, but he's president, he doesn't know.
No,
that's embarrassing.
Trump is from the real estate industry, and he thought that bricks was a construction material.
Probably. I mean, it's almost as bad. It's almost as bad.
I know it's bad. It's bad,
Okay. I think this is a good question, although it's not something we really talked about. But why isn't Thailand kicking all NGOs out of Thailand? This is a good question. I get it all the time. I do see countries that try to do this, even big countries like Russia and China. When they kick the NED out, they kick Open Society out, they uproot the BBC or Facebook or Google, and you see all the consequences. The US has a wide array of punishments that it will deal out if this happens, and they will do it to the entire country collectively, and they will also do it to politicians individually. And say in Thailand, where the elections goes back and forth between US proxies and people who are very prone to basically worshiping the West, and people that actually are invested in Thailand's national interests. And these kind of westernized politicians, the biggest fear in their little world is the US and Europe not letting them go on vacation to the West. And so that resonates with them, and they're willing to look the other way. Look at Bangladesh. I cannot remember what her name was, but she was kicked out by an NED funded color revolution. And if you look at it over the years, she was well aware of it. And she didn't do anything about it because she didn't want to upset the apple cart. She didn't want to make the West angry at her. She wanted to fit in. And then by the time she realized that the West does not have a place for her at the table, not now, not ever, was never going to let her sit at the table or even under the table, she was already on a helicopter flying to India because she got kicked out by the US. So this is the reason why. It's a combination of the US having very serious penalties for trying, and also individual weakness among some of the more westernized politicians. And this is not just Thailand. This is pretty much every country. We already talked about this. Why does the panel think Macron and Stammer are up to in talking about sending troops to Ukraine? It's obedience to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. He told them to do it, so now they are doing it. It's that simple. It's that simple. Again, anyone, Rasheed, if you want to jump in on anything, you're more than welcome. Iran, Yemen, axis of resistance generally retaliate after rather than attack? Why are they waiting to attack decisively? A war on them by the U.S. is inevitable, so why are they not attacking first? You have to understand that there's limits to the power of all of these nations. Russia, China, huge countries, nuclear arsenals, they have very real limits to what they are able to do. And so a country like Yemen, or an organization like Hezbollah, even more so, in Iran, has severe limits to what it is capable of doing. And that kind of ties into this next question. Let me see if I can find it here. This one right here. Why was Hezbollah able to be destroyed so easy? I don't think that they're destroyed, but they did suffer a severe blow. Analysts like Richard Medhurst claim Hezbollah had a lot of firepower, that they overestimate their capabilities. Well, you have to actually analyze the type of firepower, the depth of that firepower. Hezbollah is a defensive organization. Israel was not able to invade and take over southern Lebanon. They always enter and they get mauled and then they withdraw. That is the way of it. But beyond that, again, Hezbollah has serious limitations. A lot of people who support Hezbollah don't want to see the limitations because they don't want to imagine that it is weak and vulnerable and is not capable of overwhelming and eliminating Israel, which is something they emotionally want. But analytically speaking, it is impossible. There's a lot of questions here. Let's see. Get that one out of here. Yeah, thinking Trump is what will the effect of so many in alt media thinking that Trump is about peace and the EU is against it? Well, I think, and I'll ask Angelo and Rasheed in turn, I think the effect is, instead of holding the Trump administration accountable and creating a wave of opposition to U.S. policy that really is continuity of agenda with MAGA stamped on it, when you just go along with it, you pretend, you engage in wishful thinking, you're ignoring what is actually happening, you're enabling it and you're abetting it. And I don't mean you're doing it. Sometimes these people are not doing it consciously. They're just prone to wishful thinking. They don't want to admit that this is happening. But ultimately, people invested hope in Trump because they wanted to see this change happen. If you really want this change to happen, you have to face reality. You have to speak up against this. You have to create a wave against it. By speaking, by aiding and abetting it, you're creating a wave that's just going to sweep more and more people along to support this continuity of agenda. I think that is extremely dangerous. That's why I don't care how many people leave my audience, how many people call me names. I'm going to constantly speak up about this because I think it is fundamentally important. Angelo and Rasheed, what do you think about this?
Well, I think personally, I have a lot of tolerance. I know that there's a speed, this awareness. It takes time. We've seen this in many different conflicts. We've seen it in Ukraine. Remember in Ukraine, how many people they started with Zelensky and now they're coming back. I mean, slowly you have the laggers and you have the one that comes really, really late. It's the same in alternative media. Not everybody, and we saw it with Syria too. Remember, we have lots of friends which are extremely smart people in alternative media. They didn't see it. They saw that Assad was the bad guy and so on. It was probably not perfect, but he was maintaining some kind of cohesion and peace somehow. Especially when it comes to minority, and they bought into this real opposition. So and then they come around, people. So I would say that slowly this is going to take time, and I think I have some level of tolerance because a lot of people that actually are still trying to believe in Trump, they're getting slowly skeptical, and that's the process. And I think this is how we do it. And to be honest, we learn from each other too. Some things we don't see the full picture. It's by doing those shows, by listening to other people, that we challenge, and every time it's a constant challenge, and we might be wrong, but to be honest, if I was to be wrong on Trump, and let's say there's peace in Ukraine, I'll be the first one to say, well, he did right, but it's showing us, and I hate to be the guy to say, I don't get any pleasure in saying what I told you. If I have to say, well, I told you, it's maybe too late, and there was the damage. And what happens is that This is the purpose of what we are doing. Why are we here? We are sending, some our opinion or analysis, and people, if they are open-minded, they get this, and that's a reference, and you can challenge that, and this is how we grow together. But I would say we are tolerant. A lot of people, they are still backing Trump. They are in alternative media, and I think they are genuinely misled, and I'm okay with that. That's a process, and we might be wrong. Some points we might be wrong. I hope we're wrong, actually. Brian, I wish, I'm confident we are on the right, but I wish we were wrong, and maybe there's going to be peace in Ukraine. But no, we might come back and say, well, we told you. Rasheed.
Has happened once or twice already, Angelo. Rasheed.
Well, sometimes we have to remember that they also are humans, and sometimes the politicians speak to some of their ills too, and some of their wants. And when he's a good actor, or when she's a good actor, sometimes it carries over to that person. Not that they are wanting to mislead you, is that they want it to be true so bad, so they hold on to every shred of belief that maybe this guy or this girl may be a little different. And as time progresses, as Angelo says, some of them come over, and then some of them, they don't come over. And so, but you can't say it about all the alternative media. You can just say it about some people, and you have to also give them a little leeway. They're human, and they have goals, they have issues, they have things that need to be spoken to, and sometimes they hold on to that is spoken to by certain people. Now, if they hold on to it after it's
told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without you.